Hello, Bob Rietveld here, preaching and teaching minister of the Spring Hill Christian Church of rural Oak Lockney, and welcome to our next lesson on the doctrine of the church. And we are continuing the lesson about the eldership. And so today we're going to talking about finish talking about the requirements in order to be an elder, which include having an exemplary household, an ability and desire to serve. There needs to be a plurality of elders, and we'll talk about the presiding elder. The elder, the scripture, 1 Timothy chapter 3, verses 4 and 5, and Titus 1:6, is to have a household that could serve as a good example of Christianity or a Christian family, in keeping with the above reproach principle. We should not expect a perfect family. There is no perfect person. The only perfect person was Jesus Christ, God in the flesh. The idea is a family that is respected by the church as an example of the Christian character and stability we would like to see in all of our church families. The rationale for requiring an exemplary household is as a testament of management skills. 1 Timothy 3:5. Family management skills serve as an indicator of one's potential to perform administrative and pastoral duties of eldership. Managing a family is the closest experience to the eldership and its servant leadership style. Administrative experience in other areas of life, such as business, education, the military, and social organizations, does not readily translate into potential for church leadership. Family management is not necessarily the only way to judge a person's potential as an elder, but it is the most natural way to do that. Another rationale is as a reinforcement of a man's image as a spiritual leader. Titus 1:6 and 7. Negative conduct by a man's family can reflect poorly upon his perceived ability to be a spiritual guide. This is a specific application of the above reproach principle. Though the real problem may be the strong-willed personalities of the children rather than the parental leadership of the man. A loss of respect among the congregation can seriously hinder his efforts as an elder. Some specific problems to watch for within a family: Titus 1:6, rejection of the Christian faith, wild, riotous conduct. The New American Standard Bible says dissipation, rebellion against parental authority. The key criterion here is how much does the context of the family diminish the congregation's respect for the man. A man who has had difficulties with his family could eventually demonstrate his ability to serve as a spiritual leader. If he has since that time settled his family into a more stable and Christian condition, then he has now satisfied the exemplary family principle. If he can no longer establish an exemplary family because his children have already left the home, then the church can consider other means for measuring his potential as a church leader. The eldership could assign him service tasks within the church that are somewhat comparable to the work of elders, such as teaching, preaching, evangelism, and visitation. This idea seems to be consistent with the exemplary household principle in that both seek to measure a person's potential for spiritual leadership. However, if a congregation is still troubled by the former conduct of a man's family, then a man with prior family difficulties is not yet above reproach on this issue. An elder who has difficulties arise within his family while he's serving as an elder should step down if the negative publicity hinders his ministry. The man's ability to be a spiritual leader and do the work of an elder would not necessarily be an issue, since he would have already proven himself in his service of the church or for the church. The key issue should be whether or not the congregation can still respect his leadership, the above reproach principle, or is distracted by the controversy. A man who has only one child can still satisfy the exemplary household principle. The biblical text speaks of managing one's children because it's common practice to speak in the plural when giving rules. For example, all parents with children between ages 5 and 16 must enroll them in school. Those of you with children may come to the front of the serving line. Sarah gave birth to her one and only son, and then celebrated by saying, "Who would have said to Abraham and Sarah would nurse children? Yet I born him a son in his old age." Genesis chapter 21, verse 7. But if any widow has children or grandchildren, they must first learn to practice piety in regard to their own family and to make some return to their parents, for this is the acceptable in the sight of God. A widow is to be put on the list only if she is not less than 60 years old, having been the wife of one man, having a reputation for good works, and if she has brought up children. 1 Timothy 5:4 and verses 9 through 10. However, if a congregation believes that an elder must have children and not just one child, then the man with one child is not yet above reproach from the congregation on this particular issue. A man with no children could demonstrate his ability to be a spiritual leader in other ways. It may be that Paul's intent was to require both marriage and children. But it may also be that Paul's intent was not to require children, but to give a condition for elders who have children. The best approach seems to be for an eldership with experience leading a family to be the norm. The fact that Paul gives a rule for elders with children implies that he assumes the typical candidate for eldership will be married with children. Personal experience confirms that child raising provides maturing experience that naturally carry over into leading a church. The use of a man with no children as an elder should at least be an exception rather than the norm. However, if a congregation believes that a man must have raised children in order to serve as an elder, then a man with no children is not yet above reproach on this issue. The ability and the desire to serve needs to be a requirement for an elder. There needs to be some type of adequate ability. It should be obvious that an appointee for a position of service or leadership should have the ability to perform his duties. Elders are specifically required to be able to teach. 1 Timothy chapter 3, verse 2. Teaching assignments among the eldership could be distributed according to the individual strengths and interests. 1 Timothy 5:17. Thus, some elders could excel in group presentations, while others give instructions in more private settings, as in visitation calls. But every elder should be able and willing to offer instruction in doctrine and refutation of false doctrine as needed within the congregation. Titus 1:9. An elder must have a desire to serve. Seeking the position of elder is to be voluntary. 1 Timothy 3:1 and 1 Peter 5:2. It's not motivated by a self-serving attitude. Titus 1:7. The Greek me athedes, the English translation not self-willed, not overbearing, not arrogant. And so the basic idea is not focused upon his own ideas to the exclusion of the ideas of others. The Bible also talks about a plurality of elders. The New Testament pattern is for every congregation to have more than one elder. Every New Testament reference to the eldership within the congregation is in the plural. The elders of Jerusalem in Acts 11 and 15. The elders in every church visited by Paul and Barnabas in Acts 14. The elders of Ephesus, Acts 20. The elders of Philippi, Philippians 1:1. The elders in every city in Crete, Titus 1:5. The elders among the readers of James and 1 Peter, James 5:14 and 1 Peter 5:1. The idea of plurality is not contradicted by the theory that the church in each major city was broken down into smaller house churches with a single elder each. Even if there were smaller house churches, all of these smaller groups were considered part of the large city church. The church in Jerusalem, the church in Antioch, the church in Ephesus, the church in Corinth, the church in Thessalonica. Thus, the individual house church elders would together form an administrative leadership for the whole church and a plurality of elders for the larger church body. Though the house church scenario does not imply a single elder rule, but it does suggest that a church can have small group meetings without requiring that a plurality of elders be present. When only one man is willing and qualified to serve as an elder, it seems best to work with a temporary board of men rather than a single elder. Though this is not the New Testament ideal, a temporary board of men is consistent with the principle of plurality in church leadership. This plan would still allow for the benefits of the consensus approach to decision making. It would avoid establishing the precedent for one person to take charge of church matters. The man who is solely qualified to serve as an elder would naturally belong on a temporary board of men, perhaps as the chairman, as he could perform pastoral service for the congregation even with the title of the elder. The idea of a presiding elder. It's reasonable for the eldership to appoint a presiding elder for their meetings, to direct the agenda and discussion, to be a central location for receiving information between meetings, but not with an authority to override the leadership of the elders. There is no biblical basis for granting a single elder preeminent authority over the other elders in a congregation. The preeminent bishop concept developed by after the New Testament period within some churches of the 2nd century. And the key promoter in the early 2nd century of the idea of a preeminent bishop was Ignatius of Antioch, who died in 117 AD. The basic problem with the preeminent bishop idea is that the New Testament does not refer to such a practice. What appears to be an early manifestation of this idea was strongly condemned by the Apostle John in 3 John verses 9 through 10. So I hope you've enjoyed these last few messages on the requirements to be an elder within the church. As much as I have enjoyed presenting these lessons, next week we're going to start talking about preachers in our next session, and we'll be talking about many of the different aspects as it relates to that particular person. So I hope that you have a great rest of the week, and may God bless you.